greater than negative 2. So this expression is always greater than negative 2. And so the solution is going to always be true. We have this nice linear expression inside the absolute value. What comes out of that absolute value is always going to be positive or possibly equal to 0, but never negative. So every real number is going to be a solution to the inequality, and we can describe this in interval notation as negative infinity to infinity. Of course, we put parentheses on both sides because we never get to infinity. In this next example, we can try to find the answer in a similar way. I want to start by solving the equation, the absolute value of 5x plus 8 plus 10 equals 4. And as we saw in an earlier example, we first need to deal with the plus 10 before we can deal with the absolute value signs. So let's subtract 10 from both sides, and we end up with the equation, the absolute value of 5x plus 8 equals negative 6. So based on what we saw in the last example, I hope some alarm bells are going off here, because having an absolute value compared to a negative number is problematic because absolute values are never negative. So there's going to be no solution to this equation. So we need to recognize to stop and not go any further. So let's go back and think about what we started with. We had the absolute value of 5x plus 8 plus 10 is less than or equal to 4. So it's totally okay to add and subtract things from an inequality. It's not going to change the sign. So if we subtract 10 from both sides of that initial inequality, we'd get the absolute value of 5x plus 8 is less than or equal to negative 6. And now let's think about whether that's possible. Negative 6, of course, is negative. The absolute value symbol is never negative. The only values that are less than negative 6 are going to also be negative. So this expression can never be less than negative 6. And so there's no solution. The overall answer to the inequality is no solution. We can't really describe that using interval notation, but there is a symbol called the empty set symbol that can be used when there is no solution set, when there's no values in the solution set. Now, in the next example, we have a similar issue with a plus 7 here, but we'll see it's a little friendlier, so let's get started. So I can solve the related equation, the absolute value of 3x plus 2 divided by 4 plus 7 equals 12. I want to subtract 7 from both sides before I deal with the absolute value. But this time I get the absolute value of 3x plus 2 over 4 equals positive 5. And so we have a positive value to work with, so we can use our regular strategy of dropping the absolute value sign and getting two simpler equations. 3x plus 2 over 4 equals 5, and 3x plus 2 over 4 equals negative 5. This time I want to multiply both sides of both equations by 4. That's going to cancel on the left-hand side and give us 3x plus 2 equals 20, and 3x plus 2 equals negative 20. Subtracting 2 from both sides gives us 3x equals 18, and 3x equals negative 22. We can divide both sides by 3 to get x equals 6, and x equals negative 22 over 3, which is roughly negative 7.3 3, 3, 3. And now we can plot both of those points on a number line. 6, of course, is going to be to the right of negative 22 over 3. Looking back at our initial expression, we have a greater than symbol. So again, we changed it to an inequality here, but subtracting 7 isn't going to change the direction. So I could kind of think of this as also being a greater than symbol. Started with a greater than. So our answer is going to be a disjunction, which means that the values are going to be to the extreme right and extreme left of the number line. Solving the related equation allowed us to find the boundaries of those solutions. Because it's a strict inequality, I want open dots at the two boundaries. So our solution for this problem involves all the values that are below negative 22 over 3 and all the values that are above 6. To check our answer, we could take a test point at 0 and think about what that does in the original expression. 0 is not part of our solution, so it should not work in the original inequality. But to make sure, let's double check. If I plug in 0, I get the absolute value of 3 times 0 plus 2 divided by 4 plus 7, and I want to compare that to 12. This becomes simply 2 over 4, which equals positive 1/2. So the absolute value is 1/2 plus 7. 7.5, how does that compare to 12? It's certainly not greater than 12, and so 0 doesn't satisfy the original inequality. So that helps us feel better about the overall solution that we found. Or at least it helps me feel better. I want to look at one more example. How can we write an open sentence, meaning an equation or a statement with a variable that involves absolute value for the following statement in words? The length of her commute to work has always been within 3 minutes of 38 minutes. So if you think about what absolute value represents, the absolute value of a number represents how far it is from 0. So absolute value represents distance, essentially. In this statement, we're talking about how far away something is from 38 minutes. So just thinking about what that means in words, if 38 is sort of our target, and we want to be within 3 minutes from that, we could go as far as 41, adding 3 minutes, or we could go down to 35, subtracting 3 minutes. So the question is asking for us to set up an inequality that involves a variable and an absolute value sign and represents this range of numbers, the numbers that are between 35 and 41. And this is how we can do it. Our variable x, I want to compare that to 38, and I want the difference between those, subtraction, I want the difference to be less than 3 or bigger than negative 3. So I can add absolute values and write less than 3. And then if we think about it, when it says within 3 minutes, do we want that to include 3 minutes or not? Within 3 minutes. I'm going to go ahead and say equality is allowed, and that would be our final answer. To say that the length of her commute to work has always been within 3 minutes of 38 minutes, we can describe that using this open sentence, this inequality with absolute value, where x represents the length of her commute. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching.